The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly was the largest building ever made by any species in the known universe. It stretched for 3 kilometers, with walls of living crystal that changed color based on the mood of those inside. Today, the crystals were dark blue, almost black, reflecting the tension that filled the air like electricity before a storm. Ambassador Linda Morrison walked to the central platform with slow, measured steps. She was 62 years old, with gray hair pulled back tight and eyes that had seen too much disappointment. Behind her sat the other human delegates, their faces carefully blank. Around them, in rising tiers that seemed to go up forever, sat representatives from 412 alien species. The Cathari High Speaker, a creature of shimmering scales that stood 3 meters tall, watched her approach with eyes that held no warmth. Its name translated to Voice of 10,000 Suns, and it had ruled the assembly for 300 years. It had seen species come and go. It had seen rebellions crushed and empires fall. It did not expect today to be any different from 1,000 other days. It was wrong. Linda reached the podium and looked out at the assembly. So many species, so many colors and shapes and forms of life. When humanity had first made contact 63 years ago, they had been filled with wonder at the diversity of the universe. They had believed they were joining a community of equals, a gathering of civilizations working together for the common good. They had been so naive. 63 years ago, Linda began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. Through translation devices that converted her words into 400 different languages, humanity joined this assembly. We came with open hands and open hearts. We came believing in cooperation. We came believing that together, the species of this galaxy could build something wonderful. She paused, letting the silence stretch. We were wrong. The murmuring started immediately, a wave of whispers and clicks and sounds that humans could not even hear. The Cathari High Speaker raised one of its many limbs for quiet, but its eyes never left Linda. In 63 years, we have given everything we could give. We shared our farming methods with 17 star systems, helping them grow food where nothing would grow before. We opened our medical research to anyone who asked, charging nothing, expecting nothing in return. We sent our teachers and scientists and engineers to any world that needed them. Linda's voice grew harder. And what did we receive? Sanctions on our expansion. Taxes on our trade goods that no other species pays. Military observers watching our every move, treating us like criminals instead of allies. We were denied seats on the Security Council, even though we met every requirement this assembly ever created. The Voricon ambassador, a massive creature with 4 arms and skin like stone, shifted in its seat. Its species had been the ones to block humanity's council membership. They had also been the ones to destroy the colony ship 3 months ago. 3 months ago, Linda continued, her voice now cold as space itself. The colony ship Endeavor was destroyed by Voricon patrol vessels. They claimed it had entered restricted space. They were lying. We have the navigation records. The Endeavor was exactly where it was supposed to be. She let that statement hang in the air. 4,000 humans died that day. 4,000 innocent people. 800 of them were children. Families who just wanted to start new lives on a new world. Linda looked directly at the Voricon ambassador. The creature met her gaze without flinching, without any sign of guilt or remorse. We asked this assembly for justice. We were told to be patient. We asked for protection guarantees. We were told our concerns were exaggerated. We asked simply to be treated as equals. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip, holding it up so everyone could see. We were told no. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the automated systems seemed to hold their breath. This chip contains Earth's formal notice of withdrawal from the Galactic Assembly. Effective immediately, all treaties between humanity and Assembly member states are over. All agreements are void. All obligations are canceled. The Cathari High Speaker rose from its seat, scales flashing with agitation. Ambassador Morrison, you cannot be serious. No species has ever left the Assembly. The consequences would be, ... double quotes, would be what? Linda interrupted, something that simply was not done to the High Speaker. Would be worse than watching our children die while you find their killers less than the cost of a shuttle? She placed the chip on the podium. Human space is now closed. Our borders are sealed. Any non-human vessel that enters our territory without permission will be considered hostile. She smiled then, and there was no warmth in it at all. We suggest you don't test us. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted and screamed in their native languages. Some called for immediate military action. Others demanded negotiations. The Cathari High Speaker tried to restore order, but for perhaps the first time in its long rule, no one was listening. Linda Morrison walked out without looking back. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth, Secretary General Daniel Hughes watched the feed from the assembly with a mix of pride and fear. Around him sat the leaders of the United Earth government, the people who had spent years preparing for this moment. "It's done," he said quietly. "There's no going back now." Admiral Patricia Cole, a tall woman with short gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent 40 years in the military, nodded slowly. "The fleet is moving into position. We'll have full coverage of our borders within 3 days." "And the other project?" Hughes asked. Cole's expression shifted to something complicated. Pride and fear mixed together in equal measure. "The Prometheus array is ready. We can activate it whenever you give the order." Hughes turned to look at the tactical display showing Earth's position in the galaxy. A small blue dot surrounded by the vast territories of species that had spent 6 decades treating humanity as something between a pet and a pest. "Not yet," he said. "Let them come to us first. Let them see what happens when they try to force us back." He had no way of knowing how quickly that moment would arrive. The assembly was already gathering its fleets. It's already planning to teach the rebellious humans a lesson they would never forget. But humanity had been planning to. For 63 years, they had smiled and nodded and pretended to accept their place at the bottom of the galactic order. And for 63 years, they had been watching, learning, and preparing for the day when they would finally say enough. That day had come. Across human space, ships began to move. Stations powered up weapons that had never been tested in combat. And deep beneath the surface of Mars, in a facility that officially did not exist, scientists ran final checks on a device that would change the universe forever. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. 2 weeks passed after humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Assembly. In that time, the galaxy had not stopped talking about what had happened. Species that had never given humanity a second thought were now discussing them constantly. Some were angry, some were confused. A few, quietly, were impressed. The assembly convened an emergency session. The Great Hall was fuller than it had been in decades, with even the most distant species sending their senior representatives. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. The Voracon ambassador was the first to speak. His name was Kreshtak, and he was considered one of the most aggressive military minds in his species' history. His stone-like skin seemed to darken with rage as he addressed the chamber. "This insult cannot stand," he bellowed, his voice echoing off the crystal walls. "The humans have violated 17 fundamental protocols. They have seized property belonging to legitimate assembly corporations. They have expelled our citizens from their territories without payment or warning. They have also," came a quieter voice, "stopped providing the food support that feeds 3 of your colony worlds." The speaker was a Threll delegate named Shimmer of Dawn Light. Her species was known for their bioluminescent skin, which changed colors based on their emotions. Right now, she was glowing with what looked like amusement. "Tell me, Ambassador, how are the food reserves on Vorik Prime?" Kreshtak's response was an angry growl that needed no translation. The Cathari High Speaker raised a limb for silence. Voice of 10,000 suns had ruled for 3 centuries, and it had never faced a situation quite like this one. Humanity's departure was more than just an insult. It was a threat to the entire structure of galactic civilization. "The Assembly's position is clear," the High Speaker announced. "Earth must be brought back under our authority. The question is how." "Economic pressure," suggested the Denari Collective. The Denari were a hive mind species, millions of individuals sharing a single consciousness. When they spoke, it was with the weight of countless voices. Cut them off from all galactic trade. Within 10 years, their technology will fall behind. Within 50, they will have no choice but to return. 50 years is too long, Kreshtak snarled. Our combined fleets outnumber theirs 50-1. I say we end this now. We destroy their military, install a government that will cooperate, and move forward. The chamber fell silent at that suggestion. Military action against a member species? Even a former one was not something to be taken lightly. The last time such action had been authorized. 3 worlds had been destroyed before peace was restored, but the High Speaker was already considering it. The humans were trouble. They had always been trouble. They bred too fast, adapted too quickly, and had an annoying habit of questioning things that other species simply accepted. Perhaps it was time to remind them of their place in the universe. We will attempt diplomacy first, the High Speaker finally announced. A delegation will be sent to Earth to negotiate the terms of their return. Reasonable terms, it added, looking at Kreshtak. If diplomacy fails, we will consider military options. The delegation departed 3 days later, aboard a massive assembly cruiser called Eternal Harmony. The ship was designed to impress. With weapons visible along its hull and the flags of 12 species flying from its communication arrays, they were met at the edge of human space by a single patrol corvette, Captain Catherine. Bell was 34 years old, with brown hair and a face that gave nothing away. She had been in the Earth Defense Force for 12 years, and she had seen enough assembly arrogance to last a lifetime. "Attention, assembly vessel," she said into the communication channel, her voice perfectly professional. "You are approaching the border of United Earth's territory. State your business." The lead diplomat, a Cathari named Harmonious Purpose, responded with practiced formality. "We are an official delegation of the Galactic Assembly, here to discuss the recent misunderstanding with your government. We request permission to proceed to Earth." There was a long pause. "Permission denied," Captain Bell replied. "All negotiations will be conducted at the border station. You may dock there and wait for our diplomatic team. Any attempt to proceed further into human space will be considered an act of war." Harmonious Purpose's scales rippled with surprise. In its 200 years of diplomatic service, no species had ever denied an assembly delegation direct access to their capital. "This is highly irregular," it said. "Assembly protocols require that diplomatic missions be received at the seat of government. Assembly protocols no longer apply to us," Captain Bell said. "You have your instructions." Bell out. The communication channel closed. The negotiations, if they could be called that, lasted for days. Linda Morrison led the human side, and she proved to be completely immovable on every point that mattered. "You want us to return to the assembly?" she said on the second day. "What exactly are you offering?" Harmonious Purpose spread its limbs in what it hoped was a friendly gesture. "The assembly is prepared to be generous. We will reduce the taxes on human goods by 15%. We will establish a review process for the Endeavor incident. We will even consider the possibility of human representation on minor committees." Morrison's expression did not change. 4,000 people died. 800 children. "And you're offering us a tax cut?" "These matters take time," Harmonious Purpose said. "The assembly is a complex organization. Change must come slowly. We've been waiting 63 years for slow change." Morrison stood. "This meeting is over. Return to the assembly and tell them our position is unchanged. We will not come back. We will be left alone, or there will be consequences." Consequences. Harmonious Purpose tilted its head. "Ambassador, you must understand your position. Humanity is one species among thousands. Your military is vastly outnumbered. The assembly does not want conflict, but if you force us to act..." Morrison smiled then. It was not a pleasant smile. "Tell your masters," she said quietly, "that humanity has spent 63 years watching, learning, preparing. We know things about this galaxy that the assembly has forgotten. We know things about ourselves that no other species has ever discovered." She leaned forward. her eyes holding the Ketheri's gaze. "Push us, and you will learn them too." She walked out without looking back. The assembly's response came 6 weeks later. 300 warships from 12 different species appeared at the edge of human space. It was the largest military force assembled in 3 centuries. A wall of metal and fire designed to crush any resistance, Admiral Kreshtak commanded from his flagship, the Voricon destroyer, Unbreakable. He looked at the tactical display showing the tiny human fleet and felt nothing but contempt. "Signal to all ships," he ordered. "Begin advance. We end this today." Fleet began to move. 300 ships of war heading toward a species that had dared to defy the natural order of the galaxy. They had no idea that humanity was about to change that order forever. Admiral Patricia Cole stood in the command center of the Earth Defense Platform Sentinel. Watching the enemy fleet approach on the tactical display, 300 red dots moving slowly toward the thin line of blue that represented humanity's defenders. 50-1. Those were the odds. The largest military force in 3 centuries against a species that had been in space for less than 200 years. Around her, officers worked at their stations with quiet focus. No one panicked. No one showed fear. They had all known this day would come eventually. They had all volunteered to be here when it did. How long until they reach Earth? Cole asked. Lieutenant Commander Nathan Perry, her tactical officer, checked his displays. At current speed, about 18 hours. They're not hurrying. They want us to see them coming. Cole nodded slowly. Classic intimidation. The assembly wanted humanity to feel the weight of their power, to understand how hopeless resistance was. It was the same tactic they had used on 100 species before. It would not work today. "Signal Secretary General Hughes," she ordered. "Tell him it's time." Deep beneath the surface of Mars, in a facility that existed on no official records, Dr. Caroline Webb received the message she had been waiting for her entire career. She was 53 years old, small and gray-haired, with the kind of intense focus that came from spending 30 years working on a single project. The facility around her hummed with power, machines that had never been tested at full capacity, waiting for the command to wake up. The Prometheus array was her life's work. It was also humanity's last hope. "Dr. Webb," the Secretary General's voice came through the secure channel. "You have authorization to activate the array." Webb took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice was steady. "Understood, sir. Beginning activation sequence now." Around her, technicians began entering commands. Lights flickered as power was drawn from reactors buried even deeper beneath the Martian surface. The hum grew louder, filling the facility with a sound that was almost alive. The Prometheus array was not a weapon in the normal sense. It did not fire missiles or energy beams. It did something much stranger and much more dangerous for 60 years. Human scientists had studied the basic forces that held the universe together. They had mapped the quantum structure that existed beneath everything, the invisible framework that made reality possible. And they had found something extraordinary, a way to change that framework. "Array at 50% power," a technician reported. "Spatial readings are stable." Webb nodded, her eyes fixed on her monitors. "Continue to full activation." The hum became a roar. On her screens, Webb watched as reality itself began to bend. 18 light minutes away. Admiral Kreshtak of the Voricon Imperial. Fleet was halfway through writing his victory report when his sensor officer started screaming. "What is happening?" he demanded, rising from his command chair. The view screen showed him something impossible. Space itself was folding, twisting, collapsing inward around the human system, like cloth being gathered by an invisible hand. Ships at the edges of his formation were simply disappearing, pulled into the distortion and crushed into nothing. "All ships, emergency retreat," Kreshtak roared, but it was already too late. The distortion expanded at impossible speed. Washing over the assembly fleet like a wave, Kreshtak had one moment to see his flagship's hull beginning to buckle before everything went dark. On Earth. Secretary General Daniel Hughes watched the tactical display with a mixture of awe and horror. Where 300 enemy ships had been, was now only a sphere of absolute darkness, a region of space where the normal rules no longer applied. "What did we just do?" he asked quietly. Admiral Cole's voice came through the communication channel. "We created a spatial exclusion zone, approximately 2 light minutes across. Nothing can enter or exit. The fleet is trapped in what's essentially a pocket universe." "Are they dead?" "We don't think so. The field should be stable enough to maintain life support. They're just contained, frozen in a bubble of folded space, until we decide to release them." Hughes sat down heavily. 300 warships, millions of crew members, imprisoned in seconds by technology that no other species had ever imagined possible. "The assembly," he said slowly, "is going to lose their minds." He was right. 1 week later, humanity released the trapped fleet. The crews were deposited at the edge of assembly space, confused and terrified, their ships crushed into unrecognizable wreckage behind them. The message was clear. Humanity could have killed them all. They had chosen not to, but they could have. The Galactic Assembly convened an emergency session. For the first time in its history, there was genuine fear in the chamber. "This is impossible," the Denari Collective insisted. "No species H. As this technology, the humans must have found something. Some ancient artifact. Some forbidden knowledge from before the current age. It doesn't matter where they got it," the thrilled delegate Shimmer of Dawn Light replied. "What matters is that they have it, and they've just shown they're willing to use it." Voice of 10,000 Suns, the Cathari High Speaker, sat in unusual silence. It had ruled for 3 centuries. It had seen empires rise and fall. It had navigated crises that would have destroyed lesser civilizations. But this was something new. The humans had changed the rules completely. "We must negotiate," the High Speaker finally announced. "Real negotiations this time. The humans have made their point. They cannot be forced into submission. We must find a way forward that doesn't end in destruction." The Vorkan Ambassador Krestok, who had barely survived the battle and returned to the assembly in disgrace, surged to his feet. "You want us to surrender? After they destroyed 300 of our ships?" "I want us to survive," the High Speaker replied coldly. "The humans didn't destroy those ships. They could have. They chose not to. That tells us something important about them, and we would be fools to ignore it." On Earth, the public celebrated in the streets. Humanity had stood up to the galaxy and won. They were no longer the junior species, no longer the newcomers to be pushed around and ignored. But in the corridors of power, the mood was more careful. "We've bought ourselves time." Secretary General Hughes told his cabinet, "Nothing more. The array can't be used forever, and eventually the assembly will find ways to counter it. We need to use this window to build something lasting." "What kind of something?" Admiral Cole asked. Hughes looked at Linda Morrison, who had returned from the failed negotiations with new authority and new purpose. "Ambassador," he said, "I want you to find us allies. There have to be species out there who've been treated the same way we were. Species who might see benefit in standing with us instead of against us." Morrison nodded slowly. "There are possibilities. The Threll are practical people. The Denari are scared, but they're also curious. And there are smaller species, dozens of them, who've been waiting for someone to challenge the established order. Then start there. We didn't ask for this position, but we're in it now, and we need to make it work. Not just for humanity, but for everyone who's ever been pushed down by the assembly." He paused, considering his next words. "We have a chance to build something better. Let's not waste it." Across the galaxy, in embassy halls and secret meeting rooms, the word began to spread. The humans were looking for friends. And for the first time in centuries, some species were starting to think that might not be such a bad idea. The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On thousands of worlds, billions of beings watched the footage of 300 warships being swallowed by folded space. They saw the crews released, alive but humiliated, their mighty vessels reduced to floating debris. For the powerful species who had ruled the assembly for millennia, it was a nightmare. Their military might, the foundation of their authority, had been proven worthless against a technology they didn't understand and couldn't counter. For the smaller species, the ones who had spent centuries bowing to those in power, it was something else entirely. It was hope. Ambassador Linda Morrison began her diplomatic outreach 3 weeks after the battle. Her first meeting was with Shimmer of Dawn Light, the thrilled delegate who had shown amusement rather than anger during the Assembly's emergency sessions. They met on a neutral station at the edge of human space. The station was old and worn, a trading post that had seen better days. But it was private, and privacy was what both sides needed right now. "Your species interests us," Shimmer said, her bioluminescent skin cycling through shades of blue and gold that Morrison had learned meant curiosity. "You have done something no one believed possible. You have made the Assembly afraid." "We didn't want to make anyone afraid," Morrison replied carefully. "We wanted to be treated fairly. Fear was just the only language they seemed to understand." Perhaps Shimmer's colors shifted to something more complex, harder to read. But fear is a dangerous thing to build on. It creates resentment, and resentment creates conflict. If you truly want to build something new, you will need more than weapons. "That's why I'm here," Morrison leaned forward. "The Threll have been part of the Assembly longer than most species. You've seen how it really works from the inside. What would it take to actually change things?" Shimmer was silent for a long moment. Her skin dimmed to near darkness, a sign of deep thought among her people. "The Assembly was not always what it is now," she finally said. "In the beginning, it truly was about cooperation. Species helping each other, sharing knowledge, working together for something greater than themselves. But power corrupts, Ambassador. The strong became comfortable, and the weak became bitter, and slowly the dream died. Can it be brought back? Perhaps." Shimmer's colors brightened slightly. "If someone offered an alternative, a model of how things could work, a demonstration that cooperation doesn't require one side to dominate the other." Morrison smiled. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say." The Threll were the first to sign a treaty with humanity. But they were not the last. The Denari Collective came next. Their hive-mind consciousness deciding after weeks of internal debate that curiosity outweighed fear. They had always been treated as strange by the other Assembly species. Their shared consciousness viewed as something unnatural. The humans didn't seem to care. Then came the Korath, a peaceful species of traders who had spent centuries being cheated and exploited by larger powers. They had no military to speak of, but they had connections everywhere. And they were very good at making deals. The Velkhani joined after that. Their homeworld had been destroyed by Voracon expansion 2 centuries ago, leaving them a scattered people with no place to call their own. The humans offered them 3 planets to settle, asking nothing in return but friendship. Each new alliance made the next one easier. Species that had been afraid to stand alone found courage in numbers. Species that had been ignored by the Assembly found themselves welcomed as equals. Secretary East named it the Terran Compact. It wasn't meant to replace the Assembly. Not exactly. It was meant to offer an alternative, a different way of organizing relations between species. The Compact has 3 basic principles. Hughes announced at the signing ceremony that formalized the alliance. First, all member species are equal, regardless of their military power or technological level. Second, all decisions are made by consensus, not by force. Third, we help each other, not because we have to, but because it's the right thing to do. Watching from the crowd, Admiral Patricia Cole felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Real. Genuine hope that the future might be better than the past. But she also knew that not everyone would accept this new order peacefully the Voracans had built. Their entire civilization on the idea of strength through dominance. They had been the Assembly's enforcer for centuries, crushing any species that challenged the established order. Their defeat by humanity had humiliated them in ways that went beyond military loss. Admiral Kreshtok, stripped of his command after the disaster, had become a voice for war in Voracon politics. He spoke constantly of revenge, of teaching the humans and their new allies a lesson they would never forget. "We were surprised once," he said in a speech that was broadcast across the Voracon Empire. "It will not happen again. Our scientists are already working to understand the human weapon. When we face them next time, we will be ready. On Earth, intelligence officers watched Kreshtek's speech with concern. They knew the Vorikons were gathering their remaining fleet, pulling ships from across their empire for something big. How long until they're ready? Hughes asked during a security briefing. 3 months, maybe 4, Admiral Cole replied. They're not being subtle about it. They want us to know they're coming. Can we stop them again? Cole hesitated. The Prometheus array worked because they didn't know what they were facing. Now they do. They'll spread their fleet out, approach from multiple directions, try to overwhelm our ability to respond. It's a basic tactic, but it might work. So what do? We use the time we have. Cole pulled up a display showing the positions of compact member fleets. We're not alone anymore. The Threll have 70 warships. The Denari have their swarm ships, small but numerous. Even the Korath have converted some of their trading vessels for combat. She looked at Hughes with determination in her eyes. Last time, we faced them alone and won through surprise. This time we face them together and win through something better. Cooperation. Over the next 3 months, the Compact prepared. Human engineers worked with Threll designers to improve shield technology. Denari collective intelligence helped coordinate defensive strategies across multiple species. Korath traders smuggled information about Vorikon movements through channels the enemy didn't even know existed. Ambassador Morrison continued her diplomatic work, reaching out to even more species. Some were too afraid to join openly, but they promised neutrality, which was better than nothing. Others offered secret support, supplies, and information that flowed through hidden channels. The galaxy was choosing sides, and for the first time in centuries, the outcome was not certain. On the day before the Vorikon fleet launched, Voice of 10,000 Suns sent a private message to Secretary General Hughes. The Cathari High Speaker had been watching events unfold with growing concern. Its 3 centuries of political experience telling it that the universe was changing in ways that could not be stopped. The Assembly cannot control the Vorikons, the message said. They have chosen war, and we cannot prevent it. But we can choose not to support them. When the battle comes, we will not intervene. It was not quite an alliance, but it was something. The mightiest species in the Assembly was stepping back. Refusing to help crush the upstart humans and their friends, Hughes read the message 3 times, then passed it to Admiral Cole. It's not enough, she said. But it's a start. Across the galaxy, the Vorikon fleet began to move. 500 ships this time, every vessel the Empire could spare. They came from every direction, just as Cole had predicted, spreading out to make the Prometheus array less effective. The final battle was coming, and this time, humanity would not face it alone. The Vorikon fleet emerged from faster than light. Travel at 12 different points around compact space. 500 warships, spreading out like the fingers of a grasping hand. Each group ready to close in and crush anything that stood in its way, Admiral Kreshtek commanded from his new flagship. The Vorikon dreadnought, Eternal Vengeance. He had waited months for this moment, dreaming of revenge, planning every detail of his return to glory. Signal all fleet elements, he ordered. Begin advance. Today we restore the natural order of the galaxy. But as his ships moved forward, his sensor officers began reporting something unexpected. The human fleet was not alone. Multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace, his tactical officer reported, confusion in his voice. Threll cruisers. Denari swarm formations. Korath converted freighters. Velkhani raiders. And others. Species we don't have classifications for. Kreshtek stared at the display. Where he had expected to face a few dozen human vessels, he now saw a fleet nearly as large as his own. Ships from a dozen different species, flying in coordinated formations. Moving as one, the Terran Compact had answered the call. Admiral Patricia Cole stood on the bridge of the battleship New Dawn, watching the enemy fleet approach. Around her, officers from 3 different species worked side by side, their translation devices humming softly as they coordinated their responses. All ships. This is Admiral Cole. Her voice was broadcast across the combined fleet, reaching human and alien crews alike. The Vorikans have come to destroy everything we've built. They believe strength means dominance. They believe the only way to lead is to crush those beneath you. She paused. Looking at the tactical display showing the positions of her allies, we're going to show them a different way. The battle began with the Denari swarm. Thousands of small craft launched from their hive ships, each one piloted by a fragment of the collective consciousness. They moved as one, flowing around the Vorikan formations like water around rocks, striking at weak points before pulling back. The Vorikans had never faced anything like it. Their weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat, not for fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. They fired wildly, hitting nothing, wasting energy, while the swarm picked at their shields. Then the Thrall struck. Their cruisers had been designed for speed and precision, not raw power. They darted in from unexpected angles, targeting engines and weapon systems, crippling ships without destroying them. When the Vorikans turned to face them, they were already gone, vanished back into the chaos of battle. The Korath, despite having no true warships, proved surprisingly effective. Their converted freighters were loaded with equipment designed to disrupt communications and sensor systems. As they moved through the battle, they left confusion in their wake, making it harder and harder for the Vorikan fleet to coordinate, and the Velkhani fought with the fury of a people who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose. Their raiders struck at command ships, ignoring their own safety, determined to make the Vorikans pay for crimes 2 centuries old. Through it all, the human fleet held the center. They were the anchor, the fixed point around which the entire compact fleet revolved. When the Vorikans pushed, they pushed back. When their allies needed support, they were there. Kreshtak watched his fleet being torn apart and felt something he had never felt before in his life. Fear. All ships. Concentrate fire on the human flagship. He screamed, "Kill their admiral, and the rest will fall apart." 100 Vorikan ships turned toward the new dawn, weapons charging. It was everything they had left. A desperate gamble to cut the head off the enemy and hope the body would die. Admiral Cole watched them come. Around her, officers reported damage, failing shields, weapons running low on power. The new dawn had taken hit after hit, and she was barely holding together. Admiral, her tactical officer Nathan Perry said quietly, "They're all coming for us." "I know." Cole smiled slightly. "Signal the array." Deep beneath Mars, Dr. Caroline Webb had been waiting for this moment. The Prometheus array was already powered, had been for hours, but the enemy fleet had been too spread out to catch them all. Now they were concentrated. Now they were focused on a single point. "Array targeting confirmed," Webb said into her communicator. "Firing in 3.2.1. Space folded. The Vorikan attack force simply vanished, swallowed by distorted reality, just as the first fleet had been. One moment they were there, 100 ships closing for the kill. The next there was only empty space. The remaining Vorikan vessels broke and ran. There was no coordination, no organized retreat. They simply fled in every direction, desperate to escape before the impossible weapon claimed them to. Admiral Krestak's flagship was among them. He would spend the rest of his life in disgrace, stripped of rank and power, a symbol of Vorikan failure. The battle was over. The Compact had won. 1 year later. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Galactic Assembly still existed. But it was a shadow of what it had been. More than 30 species had withdrawn in the months following the battle. Others remained members in name only, sending junior representatives to meetings that no one took seriously anymore. The Terran Compact, meanwhile, grew stronger every day. What had started as a desperate alliance between humanity and a few sympathetic species had become something much larger. A community of equals, working together not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to. Secretary General Daniel Hughes stood on the observation deck of the Compact's new headquarters station, watching ships from dozens of species come and go. He looked older than he had 2 years ago, the weight of leadership showing in every line of his face. But there was also peace there, a sense that the struggle had been worth it. Ambassador Linda Morrison stood beside him, her gray hair now almost white, but her eyes still sharp. "We didn't plan for any of this," Hughes said quietly. "We just wanted to be left alone, I know," Morrison smiled. "But sometimes the universe has other plans. We showed everyone that the old ways could be challenged. Now, they're looking to us for leadership. That's what worries me. We're not ready to lead a galactic community. We're barely ready to lead ourselves. Maybe that's exactly why they trust us." Morrison pointed at the ships outside. "We're not pretending to have all the answers. We're just trying. For a lot of species out there, that's more than the Assembly ever offered." A chime sounded, announcing a visitor. The door opened to reveal a familiar figure, voice of 10,000 suns. The Cathari High Speaker, looking somehow smaller than it had in the Great Hall of the Assembly. "Secretary General," it said. "Thank you for seeing me," Hughes nodded. "High Speaker. I understand you have something you wanted to discuss, I do." The ancient creature moved to stand beside them at the window. "I have ruled for 300 years. I have made many mistakes. The greatest was believing that power must come from control." It turned to face Hughes directly. "I came to ask if there might be a place in your compact for the Cathari. Not as rulers, not as leaders. Simply as members. As equals." Hughes was quiet for a long moment. Then he extended his hand, the human gesture of agreement. "There's always room," he said, "for anyone willing to try something new." In the years that followed, the galaxy continued to transform. The Terran Compact grew not through conquest, but through invitation. Ancient enemies learned to work together. Old wounds slowly healed. New discoveries were shared freely, lifting all species together. Earth, a small blue world that had once been dismissed as insignificant, became the heart of a new galactic community. Not because humanity had proven itself stronger than everyone else, but because they had proven something more important, that it was possible to lead without dominating, to be strong without being cruel, to change the universe without destroying it. Ambassador Linda Morrison, in her final speech before retirement, said it simply, "When we left the Assembly, we didn't know what would happen. We only knew that we couldn't accept things the way they were. We took a chance on something better. And somehow, against all odds, we found it."